So imagine you're sitting in a quiet room, right? Just minding your own business. And you're holding a letter.
Okay.
But it's not a bill, and it's definitely not like a birthday card. It is a letter from yourself from 14 years in the future.
Oh, wow. That's quite the hook.
Right. And this letter from your future self is basically warning you of this brutal, agonizing, psychological, and professional crucible that you're about to step into. It tells you exactly how you're going to burn down your own very lucrative career,
Yeah.
how you're going to completely alienate your peers and just put this massive neon target on your back. And honestly, the craziest part,
That.
the letter tells you that you have to do it anyway. You have to walk right into the fire to save an absolute stranger, a teenager who will probably resent you for the rest of his life for doing it.
Man, I mean, that is the ultimate ethical test, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, if you were holding that piece of paper and you knew the exact cost, would you still do it?
It's heavy. You're asking someone to weigh their own comfortable survival against, this abstract concept of justice. Right. And what makes this whole scenario so utterly gripping is that we aren't talking about a sci-fi script here. This is the documented reality for a Uruguayan cybersecurity professional named Alberto Daniel Hill, specifically culminating in the year 2026.
Yeah, and that is exactly what we are getting into today. We're doing a deep dive into a massive stack of sources, investigative notes, forensic logs, intercept transcripts, personal correspondence.
It's a goldmine of data.
It really is. And the story reads like a high-stakes cyberpunk thriller, but every single terrifying detail is a real event. We're looking at a man who was wrongfully imprisoned, who metabolized that trauma to become this predictive cyber analyst.
And then went head-to-head with both a transnational cyber cartel and corrupt private intelligence firms.
Right, which is just insane. So what's our mission here?
Well, I think through Alberto's actions, we get a forensic look at the systemic failure of digital justice. We're going to examine the terrifying evolution of cyber cartels in Latin America and, perhaps even more chillingly, the private intelligence firms that literally manufacture fake threats for profit.
It's so wild. So I want to understand how a single cybersecurity guy ends up in a standoff with an entire government's intelligence apparatus. Because logically, a clash of that magnitude doesn't just happen overnight.
No, definitely not.
There has to be an origin point, right? A moment where his trust in the system just completely fractured. And looking at the timeline in our sources, it seems everything traces back to 2017 to a prison cell in Durazno, Uruguay.
Yeah, that cell in Durazno is the crucible. To really understand the Alberto of 2026, you have to understand the computer engineer of 2017.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So at that time, Alberto Daniel Hill is this highly respected professional. He has over 15 years of experience in cybersecurity consulting and digital forensics. He's got his certified ethical hacker credential.
He's legit.
Very legit. He's worked with government entities. He is, by all definitions, an insider. But then, between 2015 and 2017, he investigates a vulnerability on the website of a Uruguayan medical provider called Circulo Católico.
Wait, I'm looking at the notes here. He finds a flaw where patient data could be exposed, and he actually reports it to the provider, right?
Yes, exactly. He did the right thing.
Because in the normal tech world, you do that, you get a thank you. Maybe you even get a bug bounty for finding the hole before the bad guys do. How on earth does reporting a vulnerability lead to him sitting in a maximum security prison?
Well, the leap is entirely born out of profound systemic technical illiteracy.
Really? Just incompetence?
Basically, yeah. The authorities did not understand the difference between someone finding an unlocked door to warn the owner and someone trying to rob the house.
Oh, man.
So they launched this initiative dubbed Operation Bitcoins. They raided his home. They seized his computers, his phones, his cash, and even these random, unrelated tech souvenirs that they blatantly misinterpreted as criminal evidence.
But surely they bring in a forensic expert, right, to look at the computers and realize there's no malicious payload, no stolen data being sold.
That is the terrifying part. They didn't. The digital evidence was completely mishandled. In digital forensics, there's a fundamental requirement to create a cryptographic hash of a hard drive before you examine it.
Okay, let's pause there for a second because we have a lot of people listening who might not be digital forensic experts. Can you break down what a cryptographic hash is and why failing to do it is a disaster?
Sure, yeah. Think of a cryptographic hash as a unique digital fingerprint for a piece of data. If you seize a suspect's laptop, the very first thing you do is run a mathematical algorithm over the entire hard drive.
Right.
It spits out this long string of letters and numbers. If even a single comma is changed, or, say, a single file is opened and modified on that hard drive later by the police, The hash changes completely.
So it proves nobody tampered with it.
Exactly. It proves chain of custody. It proves the police didn't plant evidence. But the Uruguayan authorities didn't adhere to these basic standards. They lacked the technical competence to even understand what they were prosecuting.
And as a result, Alberto gets accused of hacking and extortion.
Yes, he became the first person in Uruguay imprisoned for a computer-related crime.
And he didn't just spend a weekend in holding either. He spent roughly 8 to 9 months in preventive detention.
Yeah, it was brutal.
The sources are really intense on this point. The conditions were horrific. He suffered severe health issues, including a coma episode. Almost a year of his life, his reputation, his freedom stolen because the state didn't know how to read a server log.
It's a nightmare. Yet his core nature remained intact. The sources note that even while incarcerated and literally fighting for his life, he ended up teaching basic computer skills to the other inmates.
Wow.
He maintained his innocence throughout, insisting his confession was coerced under extreme duress. Eventually, the system had to admit its catastrophic failure. He was cleared, the charges were resolved in his favor, and his record was wiped clean.
And he wrote a book about it, right?
He did. He documented the entire ordeal in Log Into Hell, a hacker's story. His case gained global attention, and he was even featured on the Darknet Diaries Deep Dive.
I am just trying to put myself in his shoes. If an institution did that to me, if a state apparatus crushed me that unfairly, I would probably retreat. I mean, I'd move to a cabin, disconnect the Wi-Fi, and never look at a line of code again.
I think most people would.
But Alberto goes the complete opposite direction. It's almost like his psychological immune system overreacted to the trauma. He didn't break. He metabolized that injustice into this hyper-awareness of state incompetence.
That's a very astute way to look at it.
Yeah.
The sources, particularly the correspondents analyzing his psychological state,
Yeah.
describe a fascinating duality.
How so?
Before prison, he carried this deep need to belong to the professional community, to be recognized by the institutions. The state took that need, put it in a cell, and tried to turn him into a cautionary tale.
Right.
In response, he developed a permanent visceral allergy to institutional lying. He emerged not as a broken man, but as a new persona entirely. They call him the Cassandra of Montevideo, or the digital dissident.
I actually love this one detail from the notes. Shortly after he's released, his record is cleared, and he's trying to piece his life back together, right? He casually finds a vulnerability on a completely separate state-adjacent system.
Oh, the screenshot incident.
Yes. He breaches it using the most embarrassing credentials imaginable.
Yeah.
The username admin and the password admin. He takes a screenshot of his access, closes the laptop, and just goes to sleep. He kept it as a personal trophy.
That screenshot is deeply symbolic. It proved to him that the very institutions that locked him in a cage for supposedly being a cyber mastermind were still leaving their own digital front doors wide open. And this creates what we can analyze as his Independence Anomaly.
The Independence Anomaly. Walk me through how that functions in his day-to-day operations.
Well, think about the global cybersecurity ecosystem. Most highly skilled professionals are bound by something. They have government security clearances, state contracts, or strict corporate non-disclosure agreements.
Right. NDAs keep everyone quiet.
Exactly. If they see a government covering up a data breach, they are legally gagged from speaking out. But Alberto operates with absolute radical independence. He has no state contracts tying his hands, no corporate NDAs.
You literally cannot buy his silence.
And because he has already survived the absolute worst they can do to him, putting him in a coma in a maximum security cell, you cannot intimidate him either.
He is a completely uncompromised observer, a neutral meta-analyst. And because he is operating so far outside the institutional bubble, he is looking at the horizon while the government is busy staring at its own paperwork.
Perfectly said.
And because of this Independence Anomaly, Alberto sees a massive storm gathering over Latin America that the intelligence community is either missing or ignoring. Which takes us to the early months of 2026 and the rise of a group called the Chronus Mafia.
Right. The Chronus Mafia, sometimes operating under the banner of the Chronus team. They represent a terrifying leap in the evolution of cybercrime in Latin America.
Where did they start?
Initially, they were a loosely organized, Spanish-speaking collective engaged in ideological hacktivism. They were defacing websites and pushing anti-corruption narratives.
Right.
Annoying, but standard.
Right. Typical script titty stuff.
But by 2026, they had completely morphed into a highly professionalized hacker-as-a-service model,
Right.
a cyber syndicato.
Hacker as a service. So they are operating like a legitimate tech startup, but for transnational crime?
Precisely. They abandoned the chaos of hacktivism and adopted strict corporate role separation. They have a propaganda wing, a coordination wing, and specialized technical execution wings.
Wow, it's a whole corporation.
It really is.
Yeah.
You have key figures operating under aliases. Elziristex, the alleged founder, Airjax, who acts as a highly visible spokesperson and operative. And then there's a subdivision called the Cronus Revolution Team, run by an alias named H1.
H1.
Yeah, and H1's group doesn't just deface websites. They're linked to severe banking and ATM fraud in Mexico.
The source material here is wild. They gamify their attacks. They run live countdowns on Telegram before they drop a nation's data. They turn national security crises into media spectacles.
It's all about branding for them.
But while the Argentine government is oblivious, Alberto is actively monitoring them. He is sitting in Uruguay, listening to their public audio spaces on X, formerly Twitter, and on March 19th, 11 days before a single server goes down, Alberto publicly predicts a massive coordinated attack on Argentina.
He was able to intercept their intent simply by listening to the way they spoke in these audio spaces.
But how do you do that? I mean, these guys are running a sophisticated cyber cartel. They aren't just logging on to Twitter and saying, hey, everyone, we are attacking Argentina next Tuesday at noon.
No, of course not.
So how does he separate the actual threat signal from the background noise of internet trolls?
It comes down to understanding the psychology of social engineering and the inevitable slip-ups that occur in live, unscripted audio.
Ah, right. People talk too much.
Exactly. When operators who are used to hiding behind encrypted text suddenly start talking for hours in public forums to build their brand, they inevitably leak operational security details.
So Alberto is just analyzing their speech patterns.
Yes. Functioning as a human lie detector, he listens for specific shifts in vocabulary, subtle mentions of target infrastructure types, and the sheer confidence level of the operatives. He parses these microsignals and publicly flags the incoming threat.
And his warning is completely ignored by the state. 11 days later, on March 30th, 2026, the digital hurricane makes landfall, and it is catastrophic.
There really was a hurricane.
We are talking about 28 simultaneous breaches across at least 17 national and provincial Argentine institutions, the Supreme Court, the Cabinet of Ministers, the Ministry of Security of Salta, and IOMA, which is the massive social works and health insurance entity for the province of Buenos Aires.
The scale of the exfiltration is just staggering. Over 8 million highly sensitive citizen records are dumped. Identity numbers, deep health records, residential addresses, the very infrastructure of Argentine citizen privacy is gutted in a single afternoon.
So millions of citizens have their data stolen. The government has just suffered an unprecedented humiliation. How does the Argentine state apparatus respond to this hurricane? Do they lock down the networks, issue public warnings?
They respond with what Alberto formally defines as the protocol of silence.
The protocol of silence.
Yes. The state institutions actively downplayed the breaches. In some instances, they acknowledged that perhaps a few isolated affiliation lists were accessed. But the overarching strategy was total institutional gaslighting,
Just denying reality.
engaging in semantic minimization, and, more dangerously, failing to preserve the digital evidence of the breaches.
I am struggling to understand the sheer incompetence here. We are talking about national governance. They have millions in international financing. They have massive IT budgets. They supposedly adhere to international security standards.
You think so, yes?
How does a guy with a laptop in Uruguay beat their entire intelligence apparatus to the punch and then watch them try to sweep a cyber hurricane under the rug?
Well, the disparity between state funding and actual security is exactly what Alberto was exposing. We actually have intercept audio transcripts in our sources where Alberto is speaking directly with Cronus operatives, including the spokesperson, Adex.
Wow, he's talking to them directly.
Yeah, and Alberto points out the absurdity to the hackers themselves. He explains that governments have infinite money, but they spend it on bloated consulting contracts or third-party vendors who fail to implement rudimentary security measures like DNSSEC.
Okay, you just dropped a technical term, DNSSEC. If I am an IT director for a government ministry and I'm not using DNSSE, what am I actually failing to do?
All right, think of the DNS, the domain name system, as the phone book of the internet. When you type in, say, supreme-court.gov, DNS looks up the IP address so your browser knows where to go.
Okay, I follow.
The problem is, the original DNS system doesn't check for ID. A hacker can poison that phone book, redirecting citizens who think they're going to a secure government site straight into a malicious server controlled by the cartel.
That's terrifying.
DNSSEC stands for Domain Name System Security Extensions. It basically adds a cryptographic signature like a wax seal to that phone book entry. It proves that the IP address you're being sent to is legitimately the government's.
So failing to implement.
Failing to implement DNS-SEC in 2026 for a national ministry is equivalent to a bank leaving its vault open overnight because locking it was too much paperwork.
That is massive negligence, and the panic from these institutions when they get caught is unbelievable. In those same audio intercepts, Alberto tells the story about a state-affiliated fuel distribution company in Uruguay.
Oh, that story is wild.
Someone merely tweeted a joke that their data center had been hacked, and the very next day, their entire server room mysteriously goes up in flames.
Literally burned to the ground.
They literally burned down their own data center to force a data migration and destroy any evidence of vulnerabilities rather than admit a breach to the public.
It perfectly encapsulates the protocol of silence. The institutions prioritize the illusion of control over actual data protection. If we use a physical world analogy, imagine a bank is robbed.
Okay.
Instead of calling the police and securing the crime scene, the bank manager grabs a mop, puts wet floor signs over the bloodstains, and tells the arriving customers that everything is fine while the vault is totally empty.
That is an incredible visual. And it really highlights how dangerous this silence is, because while the government is mopping up the blood, the cartel is operating with absolute impunity, and the fear they command is very real.
Absolutely.
There is a moment in the transcript that gave me genuine chills. They are talking about that operative, H1. Alberto mentions a previous audio space where someone merely announced that H1 had joined the room. Instantly, a prominent, usually very loud and brash, InfoSec figure named Hector Lopez went dead silent for 10 minutes out of pure, unadulterated fear.
Yes. Alberto specifically notes that even Hector's wife couldn't get him to stay quiet for 10 minutes on a normal day, but the mere digital presence of H1 silenced him completely.
Which is saying something.
And this underscores the physical stakes. H1 isn't just typing on a keyboard, he commands violence. His subdivision in Mexico was known for altering banking protocols to force ATMs to spit out cash, with operatives waiting on the street with plastic bags to collect thousands of dollars in seconds.
Insane.
When authorities finally made arrests, they were seizing Lamborghinis and Ferraris. This is highly organized, lethally serious, transnational crime.
And the Argentine government's response is to just pretend it isn't happening. But Alberto doesn't just rely on anecdotes to prove the state's failure. He actually builds a mathematical model to trap them.
Yes, he does.
He uses something called the forensic risk indicator, or the FRI. Can you explain how he uses this to break through the gaslighting?
So Alberto anchors his critique in the ISO/IEC 27037 standards. These are the internationally recognized guidelines for the identification, collection, and preservation of digital evidence.
The gold standard.
Right. The forensic risk indicator is a scoring model he developed based on these standards. It calculates the integrity of an institution's incident response. When he processes the Argentine government's response to the March 30th attack through the FRI, they hit a score of 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10 in a system where you want a low score.
Exactly. A 9 out of 10 translates to a critical risk of cover-up and negligence. He proves mathematically that the state is actively failing to preserve logs, failing to establish chain of custody, and failing to transparently report the scope of the exfiltration.
He brings the receipts?
Yep, by scoring them this way, he transforms a political accusation, the government is lying, into an objective mathematical reality.
But the cover-up is only half the nightmare. The government's silence gave the Chronus Mafia the time and space to weaponize the data they stole. This is where the story shifts from a massive data breach into a literal dystopian nightmare.
It really does.
Because the cartels didn't just dump the files on a dark web forum and walk away. They built the Samaritan API.
The Samaritan API, also referred to as the Argentina API by the group, represents a paradigm shift in how cybercrime operates. We have to understand the friction involved in traditional data leaks.
What do you mean by friction?
Usually, a leak is a static SQL dump. It is a massive, incredibly messy text file containing billions of characters. For a criminal to use it, they have to download gigabytes of data, clean it, index it into a database, and manually query it. It requires significant technical skill and hardware.
It's a lot of work for the bad guys.
Right. The Chronus Mafia eliminated all of that friction.
Let me make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. A traditional data leak is like a thief breaking into a filing cabinet, dumping 1 million paper files onto the floor of a warehouse and locking the door. If another criminal wants to find something, they have to sift through the pile for months.
Good analogy?
The Samaritan API is like someone taking all those papers, alphabetizing them, putting them in a sleek digital search engine, and selling monthly subscription access to it.
That is exactly it. They built a professional-grade queryable infrastructure. From a technical standpoint, the sources indicate it operates on an asynchronous microservices architecture.
Okay, there is another heavy technical term, asynchronous microservices. Why does a cartel using this matter?
Well, think of a traditional monolithic server like a small restaurant with only one chef. If 10 people order complex meals at the same time, the chef gets overwhelmed, the kitchen grinds to a halt, and the restaurant crashes.
Makes sense.
An asynchronous microservices architecture is like a massive commercial kitchen, where every single task, chopping vegetables, grilling meat, plating, is handled by a different independent station. If one station gets overwhelmed, it doesn't crash the whole kitchen, it just scales up more resources for that specific task.
So it's incredibly robust.
Extremely. The cartel built their API using this enterprise-grade architecture. It meant hundreds of paying clients, extortionists, scammers, hitmen could query the database concurrently, thousands of times a second, and the system would never crash. It was built for industrial-scale abuse.
That alone is terrifying, but it's the data enrichment that truly makes this a weapon. They didn't just host the stolen ID numbers and health records, they crossed those state records with commercial geolocation services.
Yes, they did.
They integrated Google Maps and Google Street View APIs directly into their criminal search engine.
This is where the loss of privacy becomes a physical threat. If a criminal buys access to the Samaritan API, they can type in a citizen's name or national ID number. Instantly, they do not just get a text readout of the person's health insurance or home address.
They get a picture.
The API visually presents a photograph of the front door of the person's house.
A 360-degree view of a citizen's vulnerability. Alberto actually mentions in the intercept audio that he tested the interface, and he told the hackers directly, this user interface looks better than a professional state system.
It's sleek, it's fast, and it is built for targeting.
And that sleekness fundamentally alters the threat landscape. We are no longer talking about the abstract risk of someone opening a credit card in your name. We are talking about hyper-precise physical targeting.
Exactly.
A criminal can query the API for individuals who belong to a specific health insurance provider, get their home addresses, look at the facades of their houses to gauge their wealth, and then initiate door-to-door extortion.
They can dox journalists or activists with zero investigative effort.
Imagine receiving a phone call from someone who recites your exact medical history from IOMA, reads your ID number, and then calmly describes the color of the car parked in your driveway.
It weaponizes citizen identity. And the long-tail effect of this is catastrophic. Because it is an API, because it is easily accessible, that data doesn't become stale. It sits there. A persistent criminal infrastructure.
Just waiting to be used.
When a nation's citizens realize their most sensitive health and identity data is sitting in a sleek criminal search engine and their own government is lying to them about it, the basic societal trust required to function in a digital state completely disintegrates.
You have a perfect storm. Millions of records weaponized, a highly capable cyber cartel, and a government deeply embarrassed and scrambling to maintain the protocol of silence.
And in situations like this, the intelligence community doesn't look for the truth.
No, they look for a scapegoat. They need to close the narrative quickly. And that brings us to the machinery of what Alberto calls la fábrica del miedo, the fear factory.
Right. Amidst the fallout of the digital hurricane, authorities in Argentina announce an arrest. They parade a 19-year-old kid named Juan Manuel in front of the media.
A teenager.
Yeah, and the narrative they aggressively push is that this teenager is the mastermind behind the Chronus mega leak. He is the cartel boss. But Alberto, looking at the forensic realities and utilizing his direct access to the underground, knows immediately that this is a total fabrication.
Juan Manuel is not a mastermind.
Not at all. He is a script kiddie.
A script kiddie being a derogatory term in the cybersecurity world for an amateur who lacks genuine technical skill and instead just uses pre-written scripts or tools created by actual hackers.
Exactly. Juan Manuel got in way over his head, likely manipulated by the real operators, and was subsequently served up on a silver platter to law enforcement.
But I have to push back here. Why go through the effort of framing a 19-year-old? If the government is embarrassed, why not just admit the cartel was too sophisticated, rather than ruining a kid's life with a fake mastermind narrative?
Because the government isn't acting alone in this narrative construction. This is where we have to examine the economics of private intelligence.
Okay.
Alberto points the finger directly at a firm called BCA Ltd, and specifically a figure named Mauro Caceres. These actors are the engineers of La Fábrica del Miedo.
Explain the economics for me. How does a private firm profit from a fake mastermind.
Private intelligence and cybersecurity consulting firms rely on the perception of massive, quantifiable threats to justify their exorbitant contracts with state governments and large corporations.
Okay.
If the reality is that a deeply entrenched, untouchable transnational cartel is breaching systems, that is a problem the consulting firm cannot solve. It makes them look impotent.
Yeah, you can't invoice for a problem you can't fix.
But if they can uncover a localized mastermind, they provide a neat, solvable narrative. They manufacture a bogeyman, they hand the target to the police make an arrest, the government gets a PR win, and the private firm invoices the state for millions of dollars in threat intelligence.
Oh my God.
The 19-year-old's life is just collateral damage in their business model.
They're literally selling cybersecurity snake oil and paying for it with an innocent kid's freedom.
Yep.
When Alberto realizes this, he decides he is not going to stand by and watch another person get crushed by the same institutional machine that put him in a coma in 2017. He decides to orchestrate an asymmetric rescue.
And his plan is bold.
He plans to expose this entire fabricated narrative on the biggest stages possible. The Ekoparty conference in Argentina and the Chaos Communication Congress known as 40C3 in Germany.
His strategy for the Ekoparty conference is breathtakingly audacious. He submits a talk titled The Chronus Nexus. But he isn't just going up there to present server logs.
No, he's bringing back up.
He plans to bring a co-presenter to the stage, an individual operating under the alias Surge. Surge is a verified original gangster from the anonymous hacktivist collective in the United States.
Hold on. Ekoparty is a massive conference. It has corporate sponsors, banking sponsors, likely some of the very entities that were breached or are intertwined with firms like BCA, LTD.
Oh, absolutely.
He is bringing a legendary anonymous hacktivist onto a corporate stage to call out a private intelligence firm by name. How on earth does the review board not instantly veto that talk to protect their sponsors?
That is the genius of what Alberto calls the ISO shield. If Alberto submits a proposal saying, I'm going to expose Mauro Caceres as a fraud and the government as corrupt, the review board kills the talk, immediately citing political liability.
So what does he do?
He strips all the politics out of the pitch. He anchors the entire presentation strictly in objective mathematical violations of the ISO WEC 27037 digital evidence handling standards.
He uses the forensic risk indicator model.
Exactly. He presents the board with a reproducible mathematical score of 9 out of 10 for evidence tampering. He makes the data the undeniable core of the talk. By doing this, he traps the conference organizers.
Because if they say no?
They cannot censor his mathematically sound forensic analysis without proving themselves to be actively complicit in the cover-up of objective scientific data. He forces the establishment into a corner. They either host the truth and gain credibility with the hacker underground, or they censor it and become undeniably part of the protocol of silence.
He hacks the bureaucracy of the conference itself. That's brilliant. And the actual execution of the presentation, the kill shot, as it is detailed in the strategy docs, is a masterclass in pacing.
The orchestration was flawless.
Alberto's role is to do the heavy technical lifting. He walks the audience through the Samaritan API, the asynchronous microservices, the ISO failures. He establishes the absolute forensic truth. And then he pivots, handing the stage over to Surge for an OSINT breakdown.
OSINT, meaning open source intelligence. Surge's role is to utterly dismantle the illusion that the harassment and the fake cartel narratives are the work of a decentralized, massive grassroots movement.
How does she do that?
To do this, she utilizes a highly sophisticated methodology called financial bridge correlation.
Okay, I need a deep dive on this. How exactly does a financial bridge unmask a decentralized network? How does she prove that 30 different hacker accounts are actually just one guy in an office?
Well, in modern digital defamation campaigns, attackers use what we call aesthetic camouflage. They create dozens, sometimes hundreds, of burner accounts across platforms like X, Mastodon, or Rumble.
Like bot farms?
Sort of, but manually operated. They use hacker branding, Guy Fawkes masks, complex aliases. They interact with each other to simulate a massive crowd attacking a target. But human beings are inherently lazy, and maintaining perfect operational security across 50 accounts is nearly impossible.
They make a mistake. They reuse something.
Always. While they might compartmentalize the text they write, they often reuse monetization or infrastructure vectors. Surge cross-references the metadata of these supposedly separate accounts. She looks for embedded Cash App, cash tags, PayPal donation links, or specific cryptocurrency wallet addresses dropped in old replies.
Follow the money.
Exactly. If account A claims to be a cartel boss in Mexico and account B claims to be a whistleblower in Argentina, but they both have the exact same Cash App destination link buried in their profile history, the illusion of decentralization instantly collapses.
Oh, wow. They just outed themselves.
Yep. Surge combines this financial correlation with advanced network cache analysis and API access logs.
Wait, how does she get API access logs legally for an OSINT presentation?
Through public data brokers, archived web caches like the Wayback Machine, and publicly queryable endpoints that these burner accounts unwittingly interact with.
Just putting the puzzle pieces together.
By triangulating the timestamp of a post with public ledger transactions and cached profile data, she can trace the traffic of these supposedly disparate accounts back to a single, localized residential IP block. She proves mathematically that the massive cartel threat harassing Alberto and framing the teenager is actually just a few operators sitting in the offices of BCA Ltd.
So Surge drops this bulletproof, irrefutable OSINT matrix on the massive screen behind them. She shows the financial bridges, the IP overlaps, the exact architecture of La Fábrica del Miedo.
And then the finale.
Yes, she delivers the kill shot. She looks directly at the audience, at the corporate sponsors, at the press, and she says, this person sent a teenager to prison as part of his business model. And then they just drop the mic and open the floor for Q&A.
It is a lethal handoff. Alberto builds the unshakable foundation of technical truth, and Surge delivers the emotional and financial motive, stripping away the cybersecurity jargon to expose raw, predatory extortion.
But the margin for error is zero, right?
Oh, absolutely zero. If Surge makes a single claim that cannot be instantly verified by a public log on the screen, the intelligence firms will sue them into oblivion for defamation.
It is an incredibly courageous plan. But let's look at the reality of the fallout. Alberto is standing on that stage, putting his physical safety, his professional reputation, and his entire ability to generate income in Latin America on the line.
And he's risking it all.
And he is doing all of this to save a 19-year-old kid, a kid who, according to Alberto's own internal analysis, will probably never ever thank him.
The psychological calculus Alberto performs regarding Juan Manuel is perhaps the most brutal aspect of this entire operation. In the strategy documents, Alberto doesn't just plan the technical rescue. He runs extensive psychological simulations on how the boy will react when he is finally released from maximum security.
He runs predictive models on a teenager's behavior.
It runs multiple predictive models.
I was struck by this, reading the sources. He saved the kid's life, but he anticipates the kid will hate him.
Yeah.
Why? What do the models predict?
The most prominent models predict outcomes he labels hostile ghosting or a time-delayed apology. You have to understand the fragile ego of a 19-year-old immersed in hacker culture.
Okay.
Being framed as a transnational cartel mastermind is terrifying, yes, but it also strokes the ego immensely. It makes him infamous.
Right, he gets massive street cred. He's the guy who hacked Argentina.
Exactly. But how does Alberto save him? Alberto goes on a global stage and mathematically proves that Juan Manuel is a script kiddie. He proves the boy was entirely too incompetent and technically illiterate to have orchestrated the breach.
Ouch.
Alberto physically saves the boy from decades in prison, but to do so, he has to publicly execute the boy's digital persona and shatter his hacker ego. In the underground, that is social suicide.
One of the psychological models in the notes is cognitive dissonance theory. It suggests the boy simply will not be able to hold two conflicting realities in his head. I am an elite, dangerous hacker, and I am only out of prison because an older forensic expert mathematically proved I'm an amateur.
Spot on.
So, to protect his own ego, the boy will distort reality, minimize the danger he was in, and completely dismiss Alberto's sacrifice.
Furthermore, the burden of gratitude model suggests that the immense, unpayable psychological debt of having someone burn down their own career to save your life is just too heavy for a teenager to carry. That gratitude ferments, sours, and turns into active resentment.
So knowing all of this, knowing the kid will likely resent him, what does Alberto decide to do?
He makes an incredibly cold, tactical, and selfless decision. He resolves to never meet the boy post-release.
Never.
Never. Maintaining absolute forensic distance is non-negotiable. If the intelligence apparatus sees them sharing a coffee or exchanging messages, they will immediately spin a new narrative.
Oh, I see. They'd say they were in on it together.
They will claim Alberto was the boy's handler all along, that Alberto orchestrated the hack and is now protecting his subordinate.
He cannot give the Fear Factory an inch of narrative space.
Precisely. By staying away, Alberto keeps the evidentiary chain surgically clean. He proves the kid's innocence, he exposes the predators, and then he vanishes. He demands no gratitude.
Which finally brings us back to the letter we started with, the voice from the year 2040, because Alberto knows the agonizing cost of this operation. The strategy document includes this profound section written as a letter from Alberto in 2040, looking back at the crucible of 2026.
It's a fascinating thought exercise.
It lays out a brutal 5-year timeline of consequence.
That timeline is a masterclass in anticipating systemic blowback. Phase 1, the first 3 months, is defined as the blast radius. This is pure adrenaline.
The Ekoparty showdown.
Right, the Ekoparty showdown. The immediate, frantic smear campaigns launched by the Fear Factory. The inevitable flurry of cease and desist letters and legal threats.
Then we hit Phase 2, 6 months out, the global echo. He presents at the Chaos Communication Congress in Germany. The global hacker community hears the undeniable truth.
But back home in Latin America, his corporate employability drops to absolute zero. He becomes officially untouchable by the establishment because he refused to play along with the protocol of silence.
Which leads directly into Phase 3, the 1-year mark, the crucible. The adrenaline crashes, the operation is over, the kid is free, but Alberto hits a wall of severe psychological exhaustion.
The isolation sets in. He faces the daily, grinding reality of sorting through encrypted leaks from whistleblowers, knowing that the corrupt officials he exposed are likely facing 0 jail time. The paranoia tests the limits of his sanity.
But the timeline doesn't end in despair. Phase 4, 2 to 3 years out, the Overton window shifts. The things he said on stage that were dismissed as conspiratorial, the idea that private intel firms fabricate threats become accepted, mainstream knowledge.
He institutionalizes his rebellion.
And finally, 5 years out, the architect.
Yes. At the 5-year mark, he achieves what the philosopher Nassim Taleb calls anti-fragility.
Anti-fragility. I like that.
Systems that are anti-fragile don't just resist shock, they actually grow stronger from it. Every attempt the intelligence firms made to attack him only verified his claims and strengthened his network.
He flips the script entirely.
He successfully traded the lukewarm, conditional approval of the corporate masses for the absolute, unshakable loyalty of the top 5% of global operators. Mauro Caceres and BCA Ltd. Are ultimately relegated to embarrassing footnotes of a corrupt era, while Alberto emerges as the architect who fundamentally broke the silence.
I want to read a direct excerpt from that 2040 letter because it perfectly crystallizes the journey. It says, "You were never only a technician. In 2017, the system took you and put you in a cell in Durazno. They took your tools, your name, your future, and tried to turn you into a cautionary tale. Most men either break or become bitter. You did something rarer.
You metabolize the violence into a permanent allergy to institutional lying.
Yes, that allergy became your engine. You are not doing this for a thank you."
It is the ultimate vindication of the Independence Anomaly. The letter reinforces that he didn't risk everything for money, for applause, or for the gratitude of a teenager. He did it because his internal code, forged in that 2017 cell, simply did not permit him to look away when he saw the machine crushing someone else.
He had to act.
And the most poignant assurance the 2040 letter offers is about his past trauma. It tells them, you sleep better than you did in 2026. The difference is that the night no longer owns you. You kept the core promise you made to yourself. You would not let the system tell the only version of the story.
He laid the ghost of Durazno to rest. Not by forgetting what happened, but by making absolutely certain that the same machine couldn't operate in the dark ever again.
And that is the vital truth this deep dive uncovers about our modern digital reality. When we think about cyber threats, we obsess over the hackers, the Chronus Mafias. But the far more insidious structural threat is institutional silence.
It's the cover-up.
It is the government agencies that prioritize public relations over preserving digital evidence, and the private fear factories that actively manufacture panic to pad their invoices. When a system is entirely designed to cover its own tracks, Alberto's brand of radical, mathematically irrefutable transparency is the only asymmetric defense a society has left.
We have traced a truly incredible journey today. From a wrongful conviction in a Uruguayan prison to intercepting cartel communications, unmasking the chilling reality of the Samaritan API, and betting an entire life's work to save a kid who will never say thank you.
It serves as a stark reminder that we must constantly question the narratives presented to us, especially when those narratives conveniently justify a massive new security budget or the quiet erosion of civil liberties.
Exactly. Which brings me to a final thought for you to carry with you. We've spent this time talking about the Argentine government, the Samaritan API, and millions of exposed records being weaponized into a sleek criminal search engine. But Think about your own data.
It's a sobering thought.
The municipality you live in, the health provider you use, the local government portals you log into to pay your taxes, are they implementing basic security like DNSACC? Or are they entirely reliant on the protocol of silence? If your data was breached tomorrow, if your identity was being framed right now in a criminal API you don't even know exists, would your local government tell you the truth, or would they just grab a mop and put a wet floor sign over the vault?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, question the silence, and we will see you next time.